All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. The Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in Saudi Arabia on Wednesday after visiting the United Arab Emirates. Now, Moscow is seeking to reassert itself on the global stage and also to bolster its influence in West Asia. Now, this is only the third trip that Vladimir Putin has taken outside of the former Soviet Union since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, following visits to Iran and to China. Now, Vladimir Putin was seen greeting the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman before the two of them very briefly sat down for televised talks. He also said that it is critical for all sides to exchange information and assessments on what is happening at this moment in the region.
Мы ждали вас в Москве. Знаю, что обстоятельства внесли коррективы в эти планы. Но, как я уже сказал, ничего не может помешать развитию наших дружеских отношений.
The Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman also said that the bilateral cooperation had helped remove many tensions in West Asia and it contributed to enhancing security in the region.
أيضا التنسيق والعمل السياسي بين البلدين ساعد بإزالة الكثير من الاحتقانات في الشرق الأوسط.
Также благодаря политической кооперации и взаимодействию нам удалось положительно повлиять на ряд моментов на Ближнем Востоке.
وساهم في تعزيز الأمن.
И это увеличило безопасность в регионе.
والتنسيق المستقبلي في الجانب السياسي والأمني أيضا سوف يعزز أمن الشرق الأوسط وأمن العالم كله.
Now, the Kremlin has said that ahead of the meeting that the two would also discuss oil markets as well as ways to promote de-escalation in the war in the Gaza Strip. Now, since the month of March, Vladimir Putin has been wanting for war crimes by the International Criminal Court for the invasion of Ukraine. Remember, he's wanted by the International Criminal Court for the invasion of Ukraine. He skipped the BRICS summit in the month of August in South Africa, which recognizes the ICC, to avoid causing any kind of a political showdown, and also missed the G20 summit in India in September earlier this year. But neither the United Arab Emirates nor Saudi Arabia are signatories to the ICC's founding treaty, meaning that they are not obliged to arrest him. Now, the Russian leader was earlier welcomed with a full cavalry escort and a motorcade in the United Arab Emirates, where he met with President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. The National Air Show team also drew a Russian flag with colored fumes in the sky. The Russian president said that the United Arab Emirates is Russia's main trading partner in the Arab world. The bilateral trade has hit a record $9 billion last year, and according to Kremlin, Putin has said that a number of projects are now underway in the oil and gas sector. Now, the American President Joe Biden has reacted to the developments. He's pleaded with the Republicans for a fresh infusion of military aid for the Ukrainians. He's also warned that a victory for Russia over Ukraine would leave Moscow in a position to attack other NATO allies.
Stand against the tyranny of Putin. Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. We're the reason Putin has not totally overrun Ukraine and moved beyond that. And you all heard me talk about it before. If in fact we walk away, how many of our European friends are going to continue to fund? And at what rates are they going to continue to fund it? This is too serious. Like I said, I am willing to make significant compromises on the border. We need to fix the broken border system. It is broken.
Now, Vladimir Putin is all set to host the Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi for talks in Moscow. Moscow and Tehran are strengthening their economic and military ties in the face of Western sanctions, with Moscow largely adapted to sanctions thanks to the rebounding of oil revenues and also its military fending off a Ukrainian counteroffensive. Now, analysts in fact say that Vladimir Putin may in fact be sensing the revival of his own fortunes, and this is something that will reshape the politics, not just in West Asia, but probably in Eastern Europe as well. And to give us more perspective on this visit, we're being joined by Dr. Gilbert Doktorov, who is an international affairs analyst. He's joining us live on this broadcast. Now, Dr. Doktorov, this is a significant visit by the Russian President Vladimir Putin. He appears to be choosing the nations that he's visiting ever since he's invaded into Ukraine. What do you make of the Russian president's visit to the United Arab Emirates and also to Saudi Arabia?
The decision to visit these two countries had a very specific and identifiable reason. That is, they are the two countries which, with Russian and Chinese backing, were in October inducted into BRICS, and they will become full-fledged members of BRICS in January 2024. So it's quite logical on the way to that happening that Putin would visit there. I think they have a number of things to discuss at the geopolitical level of BRICS, but at the same time, it is important to note that this visit was not by one man, Mr. Putin, flying in his plane. He had a large delegation of his ministers and other important leaders in economics and in business who accompanied him. And in that sense, it was not just a breakfast meeting. It was the whole day spent in Abu Dhabi,
right,
with various participants from the Russian government.
Now, the United States, of course, sees West Asia as its diplomatic backyard. Historically, it is the United States over the course of the last several decades that, in fact, has been pulling the strings here. But what we've witnessed over the course of the last few months is that China has managed to facilitate the ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran to improve. China is also taking a more assertive stance on what it intends to happen between Israel and Palestine. Do you think that Russia is now joining the bandwagon of probably challenging the Americans in West Asia, which the Americans felt very comfortable as their own diplomatic backyard?
The Russians have been challenging the Americans in what they consider to be their backyard since 2015, when they entered the civil war in Syria to save the government from radical terrorists that were being financed and promoted by the United States and its allies. So the standoff between the United States and Russia in this part of the world is of considerable duration in the Putin period of leading Russia. 2015 is a cardinal year, and much of what we've seen in the Ukrainian civil war, or the Ukrainian-Russian war, as you want to put it, is the use of military technologies and equipment which the Russians used in their war in Syria. Indeed, going back a half a year or more to where the Prigozhin's Wagner group was of a particular moment, decisive importance in a local conflict around Bakhmut. That particular military unit was formed and grew in the civil war in Syria, which Russia participated in. So this is not a new development. It is an extension of a pattern that has been well established now for 8 years.
Now, Dr. Doktorov, we also need to look at this visit in the context of what is happening at this moment in this raging war between Israel and Hamas at this moment. Historically, over the course of the last few decades, Russia has by and large remained neutral. Do you expect Vladimir Putin to now be taking a more assertive stance so far as the Israel-Palestine conflict is concerned? Because that's precisely what the Chinese are now doing.
Well, the Russians have been neutral, although in the last 6 weeks or so, ever since the Israelis launched their savage attacks in Gaza, Russia has been tilting towards the Palestinians and away from Israel. Nonetheless, the position of Russia is to be an honest broker, to present itself as an honest broker for the settlement of the ongoing war in and around Gaza, lest it become a regional, if not a global war. In that sense, the Russians and the Chinese are reading from the same page.
And my final question to you, Dr. Doktorov, is about what is happening within the United States about backing the Ukrainian war effort. There seems to be complete confusion. Now, the White House says that it is almost running out of funding to back the Ukrainian war effort, and it is not able to secure funding within the Congress. How do you think Vladimir Putin would be looking at that?
Well, let's turn attention to Washington, because that's the decisive area of confusion. I think that that you shouldn't take at face value anything that Mr. Biden says in his remarks about Russia to move on and expand its military efforts against NATO. This is all Cold War rhetoric that he's been spouting for the last 50 years, and is irrelevant to the present situation. The present situation is that Mr. Biden is complicit in the defunding of Ukraine. And as he says, they want to pin the blame on the Republicans. But the fact is that he had every possibility of getting the money that he wants from the Senate if he had agreed to the demand of the Republicans that more money also be put up for the border security. He didn't do that. And he knew that the Republicans would then reject the bill. So he is finding a way to let Ukraine sink and then to blame the Republicans.
I think that's a crucial statement that you've made. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you for having me.